Hello students, I welcome you all to my Shyam course titled Comics and Graphic Novels in Indian Context. We are into the week 5 of our course, which is titled as Indigenous Art in Graphic Novels. From past few weeks, we have been discussing visual methodologies, apart from the text of Gillian Rose, but we have been discussing visual methodologies in general. What are the tools, what are the definitions, what are the terms that are very much important for a critique or a research scholars or a student who is interested into the studies of comics and graphic novels. Apart from that, in week 2, we have familiarized ourselves with the emergence of comics form in India, how it was influenced from the West, and how subsequently India went on to produce its own superheroes, as well as the emergence of diamond comics, which actually went from the superhero tradition to kind of narrating the stories of Indian middle classes through its popular comics like Roma Chatterji, Pinky, and so many others. In the third week, we have dealt with the emergence of Indian graphic novel, discussing how the form was different from comics, what was the content, how is the content of Indian graphic novels different from that of the globally produced graphic novels. What is it? What is that Indianness? How is this Indianness produced that makes Indian graphic novel very exclusive and only related and can only be directly relational to the Indian context? In the fourth week, we discussed the representations of women from comics to graphic novels, and we drew a trajectory from Amar Chitrakartha series to the post-millennial Indian graphic novels, where Sita's character, where several other kinds of women emerged in the post-millennial women graphic narratives of India. I assume that by now you all have a very detailed, you have a very thorough idea about how comic books are read. And because all these comic books or all these graphic novels that I was talking about from past few weeks were in a way designed in the Western tradition or were very different to what I am going to discuss today. However, in indigenous art, we are going to discuss about folk art or vernacular art known by its various names, where it is not the individual or their art or the characteristics of their art which are important, but it is the folk art traditional forms, the kind of community that practices and kind of traditions and norms that have been prevalent in a particular art are more important than the artists themselves. So, in lecture 1, which I am going to deliver today, the first lecture is kind of a theoretical lecture based on the book of Roma Chatterji, her book titled Speaking with Pictures. In the introduction to her book, Roma Chatterji says, she focuses on Patua Chitrakar of Bengal and Gond Pradhan art of Madhya Pradesh. So because we have diverse regional arts and almost all parts, India being a heterogeneous country, we have art flourishing from diverse regions, from diverse geographical states, which have unique characteristics in their art. And it is impossible to discuss almost all the art forms in just one book. So Roma Chatterji has just used or she has just paid attention on two particular art forms, that is Patua art of Bengal and Gond Pradhan art. Patua art is something that I have been kind of speaking about, that I have also mentioned in my earlier lectures. But Gond art is something that you're going to familiarize yourself with in this very particular unit, because there is a graphic novel which is completely dedicated to the study of Gond art through the study of graphic novel Bhimayana. Further, Roma Chatterji also examines evolution of art forms through market, social and institutional influences. Because in this case, we are talking about folk art, and folk art is very regional, which is produced in a particular region among the people who are practicing it. So it can be practiced in the form of family tradition. It can also be transferred from one generation to another in the form of historical practices. For example, like Rajasthan miniature paintings, which existed from Mughal or pre-Mughal eras, and they have come down to us after subsequent appropriations and manipulations or kind of revisions and changes that have been done as per the time and the community that practiced the art. So how market, how social and institution effects or kind of goes on to transform the kind of art. What was it? How was miniature painting, for example, changed from Mughal era to when it was implemented or drawn by the Rajput era, when the painters were drawing the same kind of painting style in the Rajasthani Rajput based area. And further, when the Indian kingdoms were dissolved after the independence of India, how this particular art was then, thrown upon to the market forces, and, something that very much belonged to royalty or very much belonged to upper and elite classes, that, possession of miniature paintings was now easily available in the market. So what kind of socio-political, cultural, economical forces go on to shape the trajectory of folk arts? Because it is not important that the folk art that was there since beginning will continue to be in its same form or similar form even today. Roma Chatterji highlights the hybridity and contemporary relevance of these traditional forms. So she goes on to throw light upon what are the factors that have led to the change in these kind of painting styles. And for example, while talking about the Patua art in Bengal, she says that, as I have also said it previously in my lecture, that this was the art which was actually a performative art, where the visuals were being drawn upon a scroll, and as the scroll would unfold itself, the singers would sing the story that is being depicted in the scroll. But additionally, what she adds to this discourse is that apart from being a performative art, Patuas were the people who used to sing songs and, draw the scrolls for begging, for acquiring alms, for acquiring the money. But later on, this very practice was institutionalized, and the government and the state thought that this is a very important art which is losing out in the race, in the competitive market of digitally produced images or artificial images or other art forms that are there. So they the state kind of stepped in and decided to kind of endorse this form of art, to kind of sponsor this kind of art as one of the folk art forms which emerged from Bengal. She further talks about the shift from folk performance to folk painting, as we see it in the form of Chitrakars, and Chitrakars was the title which was adopted by the Patua painters, because they were drawing a chitra, so they started calling themselves Chitrakars. So this was a title, a surname. Chitrakars were once seen as beggars or street performers. With urban demand, they transitioned into respected painters. Themes became secular, addressing contemporary issues. Performers became painters due to market dynamics. You see, the third point, themes became secular. So now this is one thing. Earlier, the Patu art was only about mythological paintings. It was kind of revisiting Indian epics and drawing the stories of gods and goddesses through the Patua scroll. But when the art kind of diversified, that when the state thought that they would take upon, and then you get, when the state interferes, and then they kind of open up the market for the artists, for the art to be sold in metropolitan cities, in big cities where you have tourists coming from the west or maybe tourists coming from other parts of India who kind of tend to value your art, who tend to find your art something different from what they have seen, and they kind of value the regional effort that the artist has taken. So only mythological stories, epic stories may not be something that may impress the buyer. So in order to fulfill the market demands, because the buyers started coming from all over the world, when Patua the horizons of the Patua art was broadened. So the painters decided, the Chitrakars decided that they would look at some major themes, some of the most widely prevalent themes that can be easily understood and that were easily comprehended by the general public who would come and buy these scroll arts. So, for example, that is why there is a graphic novel which we'll do in our course with the title called Tsunami. And Tsunami uses Patua art because then you see the theme has become something like tsunami, the destruction that the tsunami caused in India. It becomes one of the themes which can be easily understood by the masses who had gone through or who have even certain idea about what kind of devastation was caused by Indian tsunami. Institutional influence on folk art. NGOs, art fairs like Delhi Hat and galleries increased visibility and value. So, as I said, that when the state thought upon to interfere and kind of help the marginalized, the kind of fading out art and artists, then you have, the state gives you space. The state gives you that platform where you can advertise about your art. For example, some very famous and very popular places like Delhi Hat, or for that matter Banjara Market, which is even advertised on Instagram, which is advertised on YouTube and other social media platforms for the kind of folk art pieces, folk artists that come and sell their products in such markets. So because such platform was provided by the state, so you see in places like Delhi Hat, for example, if you would go, the artwork that is kept there is not cheaper at all. I mean, it's very expensive to the point that it is priced doubly or thrice the price of which the artist used to sell the same product in their own regions. So here, by coming to the capital city where they get all kinds of buyers, they are not only kind of expanding their market, they are not only kind of utilizing this strength, utilizing this opportunity to earn some major livelihood for themselves, but they also know that the people who are visiting Delhi Hat are the people who can afford to buy such kind of art pieces, which was not there earlier in their hometown or in their heartland where they used to make those art pieces. So it is the state's role, it is the institutional effort that has brought the lovers of the regional art, folk art, indigenous art, or maybe you can say vernacular art forms, and the people who practice it together at some point of time where they could both be benefited out of it. These spaces helped artists earn more than they could in villages. Institutional platforms played a role in art form transformation. So this is how you see how a particular art creates a lot of demand. It goes on to, for example, the ethnic work, the kind of mirror work you will see, the kind of which is there in the Rajasthani fabric. If you see women wearing those ghagra cholis, wearing the mirror work clothes, fabrics, is very much in demand and during Navratri season. So how is this happening? Where the Rajasthani and Gujarati cloths, or people want to wear it in a certain way so that, they are relatable or they seem like, they appear like wearing Gujarati costumes and the Rajasthani costumes. Why is it so? Because the artisans or the producers of such art or people who produce such kind of fabric have kind of, or they have been able to advertise and popularize their fabrics, their artwork to such an extent that it has become the cult. It has transformed into a tradition. Moreover, the adaptation of such fabrics, the adaptation of such clothes in Bollywood films, you see an actress dancing during Navratri season in those kind of mirrored lehengas, in kind of playing using ethnic silver jewelry. So all these things are kind of, the representation of these art forms in Bollywood through television, through popular culture forms, are kind of expanding the market, are kind of helping these artisans who were earlier only regionally based, and this is how their art is transformed and it is made phenomenal and widely accessible, which goes on to create and much more demand than there was earlier for their products. So this has actually, these representations in popular culture are also responsible. In what ways do you see a particular product being advertised from a particular region, which can go on to increase the sales, which can ultimately go on to transform how the art is being bought and sold. Jangarh, Singh, Shyam and Gond art. So he is considered one of the founding fathers or somebody who has excelled in the Gond art. And we'll read much in detail about Gond art later on in through the text Bhimayana, which is an example of Gond art graphic novel. So founder of the contemporary Gond painting style. So whatever painting style that Gond artists have today, it was kind of Jangarh Singh Shyam was kind of the founding father of that kind of painting style. Introduced village artists to mainstream art scene, and he was also the one who enabled the local artisans, the local participants, the local painters to the market, saying that if you draw it in such a way and this is the place where you sell it, you will be able to easily market your products, you will be able to earn your livelihood. So he has kind of played an important role in kind of generating the networking of artists as well as buyers. So this is also important when it comes to indigenous art forms, because all other art forms, it can be modernist art or any other kind of art, which can be easily interpreted. But when it comes to folk art, it becomes regional, and so the expansion, the kind of knowledge that these regional arts require to be sold is much more demanded than when we compare it with the other art forms. Pioneered a sustainable livelihood model through art. Gond religious pantheon better expressed visually than textually. So in this particular art, when you see it, kind of all the art forms, because they are regionally produced, they are excessively drawing their content from mythology, because mythology is something which is consistent all over India. There are certain epics, there are certain religious texts, and their stories are known by the people all over India. So mythology consequently becomes one of the motives, one of the narratives that which is drawn across the regional artworks, across the folk arts, and is practiced in diverse forms across India. Paintings convey spiritual dimension of indigenous beliefs. Myth provides thematic structure and continuity. So because I said, it provides continuity and thematic structure because it is relatable and people are very well aware, rather than relying on the exclusively produced very internal symbols and imagery. The artists, they know that if they are going to draw something which can be identified and which can be liked by people when they see it at once and they understand what is being drawn there, then the demand of their work becomes more, then their work becomes fit for the market. Market authenticity and commodity form. Debate over authenticity in commodified folk art. Now, One of the challenges that these folk artists meet is that because they are drawing and producing work by hand, they are particular artisans belonging to a community, as I said, belonging to that region. There are practitioners who acquire this art over a period of time by kind of rigorous practice, by kind of having an insight, by being sympathetic about those art traditions that have shaped that particular art in the contemporary form throughout the history. But the challenges that these tribal arts meet, which Roma Chatterji feels, is that they can easily be reproduced in the form of photocopies, in the form of colored paintings, in the form of digitally produced images, which kind of is taking away. Obviously, the original product remains the original, but because the original will be very expensive, people take recourse to artificiality to kind of, it is very easy to produce the photocopies, colored photographs of an originally produced artwork. So people prefer going for that because it is not only cheaper, but it can easily be decorated anywhere without going in person to the buyer themselves. But this has been a big setback for the artisans who are practicing folk art forms. Original scrolls seen as more authentic than market driven ones. But there are also people, what Roma Chatterji says is that there are also people who will always cling to originality, no matter whatever the price is of a particular, for example, I mean, she gave one of the examples of Patua scroll, which was brought by a museum in Delhi for 50,000. And the museum brought it for 50,000 in New Delhi, but this particular scroll, which was sold at 50,000, if it was sold in their native place, in their own region, in their own indigenous place, it would not have cost more than 5,000. So you see the kind of, because the museums will always go for originality. They will never compromise originality with any kind of appropriation, with any kind of manipulation that happens with the original work. It also raises questions on originality and value in art as commodity. Thank you.